The thud was unmistakable. A sharp metallic bang followed by a hiss of steam escaping from under the hood. Karen's SUV jerked to a halt, and she climbed out in a daze, staring in disbelief at the pristine mailbox post now lodged firmly in her front bumper. From my front porch, arms folded, I took a slow breath. I had waited for this moment. But before I get into what just happened, let me explain how it all began. I'm Marcus. I had enjoyed a peaceful life in Willowbrook Estates for 5 quiet years. That was until Karen Fitzgerald moved in next door. Within a few weeks, she'd somehow managed to get herself elected as the new president of the Homeowners Association. That's when my problems started. First, it was subtle. One morning I noticed my mailbox was tilted. I thought maybe the postal worker had accidentally bumped it, so I adjusted it and didn't think much of it. A week later I came outside to find the entire thing snapped off its post. When I checked the security footage, the video for that particular time was corrupted, just static where the crucial moments should have been. Frustrated, I replaced it, this time with a metal mailbox, and reinforced the post. 3 days later I woke up to find it scratched and barely hanging on, clearly struck again. And wouldn't you know it? The camera failed once more. Luckily, someone had seen what happened. Mrs. Chan, the elderly woman who lived across the street, quietly called me over to the fence. "It was that Fitzgerald woman," she murmured. "Backed right into it and drove off like nothing happened." I didn't confront her just yet. But a few days later, while I was on a conference call from home, I heard the sound of splintering wood. I rushed to the window and saw her SUV sitting half on the curb, my mailbox destroyed beneath the rear tire. She stood there, still on her phone, waving her hands dramatically. As I approached, I heard her say, "Yes, Robert. I accidentally backed into my neighbor's mailbox again. These driveways are just too narrow. I'll have to bring it up at the next board meeting." When she noticed me standing there, she ended the call and offered a sickly sweet smile. "Oh, Marcus. I'm so sorry about the mailbox. Honestly, this placement is becoming a hazard. I've told the board, something needs to change." I kept my tone steady. "The only hazard here is your driving, Karen." Her smile vanished. "Watch yourself, Marcus. The HOA doesn't take kindly to residents who endanger the neighborhood. I'd hate for you to get fined for negligence." Later, when I directly confronted her at her front door, she just crossed her arms and smirked. "Your mailbox is in violation. It sticks out over 3 inches past the approved boundary. If it were properly placed, none of this would be happening." That was a lie. I had measured it precisely and double-checked the regulations. But debating with Karen was like trying to win an argument with a steamroller. She didn't care about facts, only control. The cycle repeated itself again and again. I'd repair the mailbox, she'd damage it, sometimes swiping it while making a sharp turn, other times backing over it like she was practicing demolition. The destruction kept escalating, and I was hemorrhaging money trying to keep up. When I brought the issue to the HOA board, I was hopeful briefly. But they sided with her. Instead of holding her accountable, they fined me for having an unapproved fixture, and demanded I move my mailbox further back, into a position that would violate postal regulations. "This is outrageous," I said during the meeting. "She's destroyed it 5 times in 3 months." Karen, seated at the head of the table, didn't even look up. "These are serious allegations," she said, examining her nails. "Do you have evidence? Because from where I sit, it looks like you just can't manage your property." Most of the board nodded along with her like sheep. I later found out she had threatened the treasurer with a fine for excessive grass height, unless he backed her up. I went to the police, but without any video evidence, they couldn't act. Officer Davis, the one who took my report, seemed genuinely apologetic. "We've had a few complaints about her," he told me quietly, "but unless you get solid proof, it's a civil issue. Maybe invest in a better camera." Even my insurance company had had enough. After the 5th claim, my agent called personally. "Marcus, we can't keep doing this. One more claim, and either your rates go through the roof or we drop your coverage." Something had to change. I couldn't keep fighting a war of attrition with someone who treated other people's property like a bumper course. That's when I met Derek, a structural engineer from a few streets over. He had his own history with Karen. She tried to get his legally approved solar panels taken down, claiming they disrupted the aesthetic harmony of the neighborhood. Over a couple of drinks, I told him about my ongoing feud. You know, he said thoughtfully, there's nothing in the rules about what your mailbox post can be made of, as long as it fits the look and follows postal guidelines. And just like that, we had a plan. That weekend, Derek and I got to work designing a mailbox post that looked perfectly normal. Wooden exterior matching paint, but hidden inside was reinforced steel and a concrete core sunk deep into the ground. You wouldn't know by looking at it, but it wasn't going anywhere. Not without serious consequences. And today I finally saw those consequences play out. Karen had backed straight into it again, except this time it was her car that took the damage. The post stood firm. The bumper didn't. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. I stepped off my porch slowly, letting her stew in the silence before I said anything. We began with a 6-inch steel pipe, thick and durable, filled to the top with concrete. It would be buried 4 feet underground, anchored in a concrete base stretching 3 feet in every direction. Above ground, it would be concealed inside a wooden casing, carefully crafted to resemble the traditional mailbox post it replaced. Derek, helping me with the project, smiled as we worked. The beauty of this setup, he said, is that it's completely above board. The Postal Service only cares about placement and height. They never said how strong it could be. And since the exterior looks like any other post, the HOA has nothing to complain about. To dig the hole, we had to rent a small excavator. As we worked, curious neighbors passed by. Mr. Thompson brought lemonade and gave me a knowing nod. About time someone stood up to her, he muttered, referring to the woman who had made life miserable for so many of us. She fined me once because my garbage bins were still on the curb 30 minutes after collection. Mrs. Chan came by later with homemade cookies. She measured my gnome, she said, rolling her eyes. Said it was 2 inches taller than the HOA limit. That gnome's been in my garden since before she moved here. The mailbox itself was reinforced steel, custom-built to appear like the delicate white one Karen had destroyed repeatedly. From the street it looked no different. But beneath the surface it was a fortress. It could probably survive being hit by a tank. We finished around midnight, and I took detailed photos, saved all receipts, and even had Derek sign a statement confirming the construction met local residential codes. I also installed a discreet network of security cameras, angled carefully and tucked out of sight. I knew Karen wouldn't stop. I just had to be ready. For about 2 weeks nothing happened. She'd drive by slowly, eyeing my mailbox as if waiting for the right opportunity. She was biding her time, no doubt assuming I'd let my guard down. But I was watching. Then one quiet morning, I was enjoying my coffee on the porch when I heard her garage door groan open. Her white SUV backed out slowly, then paused. She angled her vehicle toward my mailbox, same as always. Karen had a habit of pretending to adjust her radio or reach for something, fake distractions to excuse her accidents. But this time she gunned it, hitting the post at what I estimated was about 15 miles per hour. The crash echoed through the neighborhood. Her SUV's front end folded like a soda can. Airbags exploded from the steering wheel, and steam hissed from under the hood. My mailbox stood untouched, unshaken. Karen climbed out, pale and visibly shaken. Her bumper was mangled. The hood buckled like it had been stomped on, and fluid gushed onto the asphalt. She stared at the mailbox in disbelief. "What the hell is that thing made of?" she shrieked. Her voice was high and furious. I sipped my coffee. "It's a legal mailbox, Karen. Fully compliant. Would you like to see the documentation?" Neighbors emerged from their homes, drawn by the noise. Mr. Thompson grinned openly. Mrs. Chan was already on her phone, likely spreading the word. Karen, flushed with embarrassment and fury, called the police. When Officer Martinez arrived, I handed over all documentation. He reviewed it, inspected the mailbox, then turned to Karen. "Everything seems to meet code," he said. "This looks like a case for your insurance company." The adjuster came by that same afternoon. I showed him footage from the cameras, 3 separate angles capturing her veering toward the mailbox, not just today but on several prior occasions. His face grew stern. "This is clearly intentional property damage," he said, addressing Karen. "Your claim is being denied, and this footage will be forwarded to our fraud department." Word spread fast. Over the next few days, more neighbors came forward, each with a story of how Karen had used her role in the HOA to bully or fine them over petty infractions. At the next HOA meeting, the room was packed. One by one, residents stood and shared their grievances. Eventually, the board had heard enough. A vote of no confidence was called. The results were unanimous. Karen was removed from her position that night. But her troubles didn't end there. Her insurance dropped her, citing evidence of fraud. The footage I'd given them was also turned over to law enforcement. The district attorney's office reviewed everything and charged her with multiple counts of vandalism and 1 count of insurance fraud. Karen fought back with an expensive attorney who claimed the mailbox was a hidden hazard, a so-called attractive nuisance. The judge didn't buy it. "Ms. Fitzgerald," he said firmly, "the evidence demonstrates a pattern of repeated, deliberate destruction of property. That Mr. Johnson built a mailbox strong enough to withstand your behavior does not make him responsible for your actions." She was found guilty on all counts. The vandalism earned her fines, but the insurance fraud brought the hammer down. She was sentenced to 18 months in prison and ordered to pay $45,000 in restitution and penalties. I'll never forget her expression when the verdict was read. Her mouth opened and closed, unable to form words. Her eyes wide, uncomprehending. The days of her petty tyranny were over, and justice, at long last, had been served.